Welcome, SACAC friends and colleagues, to the first breakout session of the SACAC conference of 2021, Counseling from the Other Side of the Desk. My name is Edmunds Aguirre, and I am the Director of College Counseling here at Notre Dame High School. And in just a few moments, you're going to get introduced to my co-presenters who are going to share their story, as well as how they got to the other side of the desk, because we did all start out on the college admissions side. And just a few housekeeping details. I know this session is being recorded, and you have the option, since this is a webinar format, you have the option to submit questions using the Q&A functionality. Please, as soon as those questions pop into your head, go ahead and put them into the Q&A. We'll be monitoring those, and as we kind of do breaks in our session, we can answer those questions, but we do have some prepared comments and then have planned for some Q&A at the end of this session, at the end of this 45-minute session, so that we can really engage with you about your questions, your comments, your concerns about counseling from the other side of the desk, just as if we were in Raleigh, North Carolina. So without further ado, we are going to go to the next slide. Oops, how did we get here? And I'm going to start off. So I ended up, after I did my undergrad at Vanderbilt University, and I'll even back up, I did a gap year and deferred enrollment to Vanderbilt before gap year even had a name. But I really did not know what I wanted to do when I graduated from college. I ended up taking a job in the Career Center at Vanderbilt, helping seniors and grad students in their job search, because I thought, what better place to figure out what the heck I wanted to do than work in the Career Center. And lo and behold, after 4 years there, I was able to start a master's in higher education administration at Peabody College. And through my master's program, realized I wanted to help students get into college as opposed to as they left college. And through a contact that I had made, through personal contact from the Stetson University, Mary Napier, who is active in SACAC and the Southern Consortium, she put me in touch with a bunch of her SACAC friends. This was just kind of the beginning of the power of networking in this profession. And I talked to them about my interest in college admission and ended up accepting a job at Belmont University's Office of Admission. I'd wanted to work in a different school from Vanderbilt, a small private school in an urban area in the Southeast, and I got lucky enough to stay in Nashville. And as soon as I got to Belmont, I did get involved with SACAC. And my first SACAC conference was in Memphis. I think that was 2000, maybe 2001, but it was at Memphis at the Peabody Hotel. And so I remember that and have been to multiple ones since. But I worked at Belmont for 12 years. During my time at Belmont, I worked my way up to Director of Undergraduate Admissions. I also earned an executive doctorate in higher education administration through the University of Alabama. And kind of after finishing my doctorate, I was looking for my next challenge. So went to serve in an enrollment management leadership position as Associate VP for Enrollment at Webster University in St. Louis. Was in St. Louis for 3 years and 4 winters. I really don't like cold weather. And I realized that enrollment management is very institution-centric, and I realized that I was much more wired to be a student-centric person. And so I transitioned my career to student success and ended up in San Antonio, Texas at St. Mary's University, working in a student success role, actually specifically with graduate students. And was there for 5 years. And was working as part of a grant. And even though my position was institutionalized post-grant, I was ready for my next challenge. And I had kind of toyed with a couple of years prior to, do I want to go back to the other side of the desk? Even before I switched from enrollment management to student success. Do I want to do college counseling? I don't know. But what I did is I reached out to several of my college counseling friends who had made that transition and asked them, tell me, what is it like on that side? What was your transition like? What are you looking for when you hire new new people. Long story short, I started my search to look for a college counseling position in the winter of 2009, 2020, somewhere in there. And then COVID hit. My dad managed to get COVID, so there's that. But I ended up got the offer for this position that I'm sitting in right here 2 days before getting laid off from St. Mary's University because of budget constraints due to COVID. So I personally believe God has a plan, but it worked out that I was able to be here and serve in this role. And I'm looking forward to myself and my colleague, Dane Monahan, are both slated to serve on the SACAC board, assuming that you approve that. And so that is how I landed here. And it's been an interesting year because of COVID and moving to a new city. But I really enjoy the work of meeting with students. And I can't reiterate enough how critical my SACAC colleagues from when I hadn't even been in the SACAC world for 5 years were helpful in me making the transition to, I'm going to take a new job at a high school that I've never stepped foot on. Tell me about this high school. I was able to reach out to SACAC colleagues on both sides of the desk to get information to make that transition. So that is my story, which I'm happy to elaborate with any of you, but I'm going to turn it over to Dan Monahan to share his story.
Good morning, everybody. I'm excited to be here and welcome to our session. My story, I'll tell you as quick as I can. I'm a Midwesterner at heart, and we tend to tell long stories. I grew up in the Chicago area, and for my college experience, I went to the College of the Holy Cross in Worcester, Massachusetts, and played football there. So you'll sometimes hear some people in SACAC refer to me as Coach Dan, and that's perfectly all right with me because I'm also the head wrestling coach here at St. Andrews Sewanee. Shout out to my alma mater who won the Patriot League Championship over the weekend and is headed to the FCS national playoffs next weekend, where they hopefully will at least be competitive with South Dakota State, who will probably trounce them. But great that they made the playoffs. Anyway, after graduation, I was thinking about what I wanted to do. I wanted to go into either admissions or coaching. And I was a senior interviewer and student ambassador at Holy Cross. I was also an assistant football coach. I won't get into the details of that, but my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, when the head coach offered me a position, he said, Christine's got to want this job as much as you do, because college coaching is a lifestyle, and it's not, you're not going to make a lot of money. Christine did not want me to be a college coach, and so I became an admission counselor. Took my first job in admissions and loved it, fell in love with it right away, and moved up fairly quickly. By the age of 27, I was a director of admissions at a small school in Nashua, New Hampshire, Daniel Webster College, which is actually now closed. Moved up from director to dean of admission and enrollment at Daniel Webster, and then moved on to Stonehill College, just south of Boston, as dean of admission and enrollment at Stonehill. Loved my time in admissions, but as I became a director and dean, I really lost the contact with students that I fell in love with admissions in the first place. And I wanted to be able to work with students on a day-to-day basis. I couldn't do that. And those of you that are listening in, where you're in maybe an entry-level to mid-level admissions position, you're probably still meeting with students a lot. If you're an upper-level position, you're probably not meeting with students as much as you used to. And that's where I was. And I started looking at college counseling positions. We were lucky that we had a few connections in the independent school world in New England, which can be a hard world to break into. And I'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. But got my foot in the door and transitioned to Cheshire Academy as the director in waiting. Many of you know Joanne Laton, who was my predecessor at Cheshire Academy. She had worked for many years at Baylor School before moving up to Connecticut. And so I took over from Joanne at Cheshire Academy, and then made the big move here to Tennessee, in Sewanee, Tennessee. So if you haven't been here yet, you're more than welcome to come to this blessed mountaintop. There's a first-class top 50 National Liberal Arts College right next door to St. Andrews Sewanee School, which is right here. And so I'm happy to have you come and visit. So I made that transition to college counseling from admissions so that I get to work with students day to day. Went from being a dean of admission to being a football coach and director of college counseling to now being director of college counseling and head wrestling coach. And I live in a dorm with 12 young women who live right outside the room that I'm sitting in right now with my two boys who are in 9th grade and 6th grade. And my wife is the, in addition to being a teacher, she's the coordinator of residential life. So she's keeps her hands busy, but it's a lifestyle that we've chosen that we love. And again, I'll talk more about that later in the presentation. Now I'm gonna turn it over to the best looking guy in the panel, Leslie.
You're too kind, Coach Dan, you're too kind. All right, greetings everybody from Nashville, Tennessee. My name is Leslie Sanderfur. I'm a college counselor at Montgomery Bell Academy Boys School here in Nashville. Thank you guys for taking time to be with us today virtually. And I wish we were all in Raleigh for sure, but fortunately we're here and we can still share some great information, hopefully share some stories that can be helpful for everyone. So to give you a little bit about my background, out of college, I actually started working in social work for a few years. And I work with families placing children in foster homes and making sure that the families were trained to service kids that were placed in sometimes temporary custody in the state, and sometimes they were actually going to be adopted at some point. And so we were working to those kinds of outcomes. I transitioned into admissions because I felt that social work really wasn't what I was well suited for. And I started first working at Tusculum College, small school in East Tennessee that had a satellite campus in Knoxville that serviced mostly non-traditional students who were going back to school, working full-time, but going back to school on the weekends and in the evenings. So that's the type of student I started working with, and really helping them to get started in that process to complete their degrees. I transitioned to UT Knoxville, which is my alma mater, go Vols. And I worked at Tennessee for about 5 years in traditional undergraduate admissions recruiting, working with high school students. Then went on to Vandy, which is where I was from 2013 until 2019, working in undergraduate admissions at Vanderbilt. And I got some great experience there, worked with some fantastic people. I think part of the reasons I was starting to look to change into the college counseling side is the work-life balance part of things. I wanted to be able to really be home with my wife and daughter more. It was kind of scary as our daughter kind of started growing up, and I would come back from a week or 2 weeks on the road and her voice would sound different. And I'm like, well, she's just growing up too fast for me. I got to do something to change. So I think my change was at the right place at the right time. For me, I didn't feel like I necessarily should have made the move earlier, but I think it worked out timing wise. Another part of my background that I'll go back a little bit and mention is that before going into admissions at Tennessee, I was working as a middle school basketball coach part-time. So I was able to do that for about 3 years before I started working at Tennessee. And that was always something that I kind of missed doing. And that was something that fast forward to 2019 when I transitioned to this role I currently have, that I was able to pick back up working with the middle school boys basketball team. So we'll talk more a little bit about that in just a few minutes, but I'm happy to be here with you guys, and I hope we can share some helpful information.
Good morning. My name is Bartley Sides. I'm Associate Director of College Counseling at Christ Church Episcopal School in Greenville, South Carolina. And much like everyone else, I also kind of had a winding path to get to where I am today. So I guess really my journey into admissions and college counseling started back during the summer of 2005. I was in college at Furman, and Furman hires a group of summer interns, and I had no experience. I wasn't even a tour guide, but I applied for the internship and I got it, and I loved it. I enjoyed my summer, but really kind of felt this is a summertime thing. It was my excuse to get to live on campus for the summer. But towards the end of that summer, my supervisor asked me if I wanted to be her student assistant and work in the admission office. And always looking to make an extra dollar, I said, well, sure, I can do that. And so I did that my last 2 years at Furman, still never becoming a tour guide or, volunteering in that way for the office. I graduated from Furman and went to business school at Wake Forest, thinking, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do something within the business world, and this master's is going to help me get there. Once I graduated from Wake Forest, it was 2008. My wife was soon-to-be wife was going to grad school at UGA, and so I started looking for jobs in Atlanta. This was 2008. I think I said that, and there weren't a lot of jobs. And so I ended up finding a job as an admission counselor at the University of Georgia. As you may know, there aren't a lot of jobs in Athens outside of the hospital or the university, and that's where I ended up. So I worked at UGA for 2 years, and then I moved back to Furman at admissions. Now you guys hear my 2-year-old, you're going to hear a story about that in just a minute, but he's probably going to join us. So when I transitioned to Furman, my wife and I were looking to leave Athens, and I had again applied for several jobs, again thinking that I may leave admissions. I was applying for all sorts of other jobs. And we got to the point where our lease was coming up, and it was ending on a Tuesday. And I actually interviewed at Furman a week before that on that Tuesday. And earlier I saw that Tia Hill is in this call. So she was one of the main people interviewing me at Furman. And I told her this. I said, look, my lease is up on Tuesday. As soon as you guys know something, I'd love to know. And so thanks to her, I interviewed on Tuesday. I was hired on Friday, and I accepted Monday morning, and we moved to Greenville the following day. I then commuted to Athens for 2 weeks before I started at Furman. And so worked at Furman for 5 years. And then yet again, a job at Christ Church opened. At this point, I wasn't really looking, but I thought it was a fantastic opportunity. I loved Greenville. I wanted to stay in Greenville. And so I applied. One thing led to another, and I've now been at Christ Church for 6 years. So again, kind of a winding path. I never thought that I would end up in admissions. I never thought I would stay here, but I don't think I'm going anywhere now. I think that I'm definitely here to stay. And one of the reasons I'm here to stay is because of our next slide, where we're going to talk about the benefits of switching sides of the desk. So to kind of give you a picture, in admissions and college counseling, I think that we are storytellers. So I want to tell you a story. So, and this is a true story. So this past Thursday, I moved houses, and I have 3 kids, my wife and I, 3 kids and a dog. And so we moved on Thursday and Friday, and have been unpacking our house. Throughout the weekend, we've discovered a couple of issues with the house. We have an electrician here right now who showed up just as I was starting this presentation. We have a plumber on his way, and I have left notes and directional arrows throughout the house. And on top of that, this morning, as we put our kids into the car so my wife could take them to school, my 2-year-old started throwing up. So he is here now with me because my wife is at her 6-month oncology checkup. She was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer in September of 2019. She is cancer-free now, but she is at this very important appointment. So I tell you all these very personal things that you're wondering, where is he going with this? To let you know that this morning, when all of that was happening, I was able to deal with all of those things and know that my office was going to be incredibly supportive. I knew that if I texted my director or the director of the upper school and told them what was going on, they would respond with emojis that how I was feeling. And I think that as we talked about this session, we all said we wish we'd made the transition sooner. Now, I loved my time in college admissions. I would not trade that for anything. I am the college counselor that I am today because I did work in college admissions. So that is invaluable experience. And if that is where you are right now, I think that's a great place to be. I love that. I think working at a large public institution and a small private liberal arts, I learned so many things that I just wouldn't have otherwise. So I am so glad I had that. But making the switch, I think that we all said, yes, man, we just didn't realize kind of what we were missing out on. And there are a number of reasons for that. You can see here on our slide, we've bullet pointed a lot of them for you. But whereas life may still be stressful, work definitely feels less stressful and it's manageable. And, I was talking with someone recently in a SACAC mentor group who said, I think I've worked the past 17 days straight. This is someone who works in admissions. And that is not anything that I have ever done on the college counseling side. And when I did do that on the admissions side, again, I loved it. But like Leslie kind of said, being away and knowing that your children are growing up as you're away, that's kind of a hard thing. So the work-life balance I've found is definitely more doable. I also think some of that could be due to getting older and maturing and learning exactly what that means. But I also think that working in college counseling has truly helped me with that. One thing Ann said is that there are no emergencies in college counseling. And I'd never heard that phrase. And I've thought about it a lot since she said that. But I think it's so true. Yes, there are times that students and parents come to you and they need help quickly. They do think, this is an emergency to them, but there's always time to figure out, okay, we can figure out a plan. Let's approach this. And so I think that being able to put down your laptop or put down your phone, enjoy your weekends and have time with friends and family are much easier to do. In terms of the benefits of actually being in the job, when I switched jobs, I felt kind of like a celebrity. The first day I pulled up and I actually had an assigned parking spot. I don't anymore, but when I did, I pulled up and I had a assigned spot that said Associate Director of College Counseling. I was like, wow, this is cool. Like, I tend to run late, so having a reserved spot right up front was nice. But it was so much more than that. It was about, going in and families thinking, and students, this is somebody who's worked on the college side. They can really help me with this. And I felt so valued by my school and my students and families. A lot of people have said things like, what about these families? Is it really stressful? And I think we're going to talk about this later, but the answer was no. I felt valued by them. And you definitely know more than you think you do. I took a sneak peek at the Q&A. We're going to address some of this later. And one of the first questions was about what kind of experience do you need? You really do know more than you think you do. So much of the college process is about reassuring families and letting them know that, hey, I've been here, I've done this before, and I can help you through it. Because for every single family, this is their first time. And for every student, hopefully, it's their first and last time, at least in this setting. And so knowing that a lot of your job is reassuring them that, yes, I may still need to go and Google facts about a school, but I know kind of how the process works. And if I don't, I have really great relationships where I can call upon someone, I can text a colleague on the college side and ask for their help. Both Dan and Leslie talked a little bit about coaching and being able to do other things. Christ Church would not want me to coach anything at all, so I have not done that. But I have been able to be involved with being on the steering committee for a strategic plan. And I have been working with students. I was asked to be a sponsor of a club that then didn't happen because of COVID, but having those experiences is certainly something that has been a plus. And I want to make time for everybody else. But the last thing I want to say is, in terms of working directly with students, this is something that I didn't know that I enjoyed as much as I do. And I told my director, Linda, this recently, and she said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, I always thought I liked working with students, but I honestly wasn't sure of that when I applied for this job. I wasn't sure that I could do that. Could I talk to high school students really, truly, and help them figure out their future and what that meant?" And that has been one of the greatest joys is getting to know students and getting to know families. And it's something that was a surprise, which we'll talk about later, but is probably the largest benefit. So with that, I'm gonna be quiet so we can keep moving on. But those are just a few of the highlights of benefits of switching.
All right, thanks, Bartley. So I'm going to talk about a few things that I think, or we think as a group, that you should consider as you're maybe pondering the move or exploring opportunities about moving over to the college counseling side. There's definitely a difference in the culture of secondary schools versus the college campus, right? In our jobs and admissions as recruiters and professionals on that side, you're often in a setting where you have a lot of moving parts. You're on a campus or you're traveling, where at a high school or a secondary school, you in this role may be coming to school every single day for an extended period of time. So you have to think about, am I comfortable with that daily life in the office? And not just that daily life coming into the office, but your environment is very different. You're meeting with high school students. You have a lot more communication with parents. So if you really hate dealing with families and parents on the college side, and that's not your favorite thing, think about, that's going to be increased, and they're going to be even more invested in their child's future. And so that's going to be a lot of communication with parents for you on that side. Your role is also different on this side. I think you have an opportunity more to be a mentor to some of the students, or to be a role model and really help influence them in their college search, but also help influence them, it's a college counselor role, so you can help influence them in other areas of their life. You're helping support them during difficult times, and you build relationships, and that's an opportunity where you can really get to know the students more on a personal level. The calendar is much different on this side. I learned the word Sucktober when I came to college counseling. I don't think I'd ever heard it before. And I never realized when I was traveling to schools how much a college counselor was juggling in that moment. So as we visited schools as admissions reps, you come in, say hello, but that college counselor is in the midst of writing recommendation letters. They're in the midst of reviewing essays. They're in the middle of entertaining admissions reps that come in, and also maybe attending conferences. So it ramps up a lot, this position, after the summer. And there's different periods of high stress. I think another high stress period could be decision time and then waitlist time. And so the calendar looks a little bit different. There are programs throughout the year on the college counseling side, depending on your school and the structure of it. But I think, like Bartley said, I think the sort of the balance of work life is a little bit different on the college counseling side. One of my biggest fears in making the transition was being worried about, well, I only know about a certain number of colleges. Like, what if a student comes in my office and asks me about or Sinus College? What am I going to say to them? And I've maybe never even heard of this place. Well, like Bartley said, you know more than you think, first off. But the second part of that is really, it's important that you know where to direct students to find out more information. You won't know about every single college. I still don't know about it. I think people that have been on the college counseling side for years are still learning about schools, and so much is always changing. But it's important that you do know how to direct them. And also, one of the phrases that a mentor of mine, Sarah Beth, said to me when I was talking to her about maybe making the jump is, she said that when a student comes into her office and they talk about a school that maybe she doesn't know a whole lot about, she flips around the computer and says, hey, you know what, let's learn together. We're going to pull up this school. We're going to find out how many students there are, where it is, and then we're going to learn together. And another phrase that we all know very too familiar maybe sometimes is it depends, right? So it depends is a thing that you say on the college side a lot. And if you get a question from a family or a student that you don't know about, or it's not clear cut what the differences are in some of the colleges, it depends is something that you'll get used to saying. And then you'll give them correct information as you move along. I think fit's very important as far as your personal values and how you fit into a school. As you're looking at different schools, don't just jump to the first available position or jump to something because it's maybe getting you away from something that you're not happy with. Really try to be patient and think about the fit for you. Is it the right place for you? Will you grow there professionally? Will you be challenged? Is it going to be something where you'll be stretched to really learn more about yourself and you can contribute as well? High school life is very different. You may be asked to chaperone proms. You may be asked to referee games. I mean, especially if you're in the boarding side like Coach Dan, you wear a lot of hats. But the positive thing about that is that as you're seeing students in these different environments, you can get to know them a whole lot more. And the other thing about it is that they see you going to school plays and going to athletic competitions, as they see you more in those types of settings, they really start to value you more as a college counselor, as someone they look up to. One of my favorite moments I had this year was when I went to so some of the students in my advisory asked me to go to their rec league basketball. So this is not even a school sanctioned event. This is they just play rec basketball at a place in Nashville. And so I went to the game on a Saturday, I think it was a Saturday evening. So it wasn't something that, all right, all the administrators are going to see me going to this event and it's going to look good. But I went, and it meant so much to those boys to see me there. All of them weren't even in my advisory, but just to see me kind of showing interest in what they're interested in really meant a lot to them. And it was neat to see them playing basketball outside of school. So that was fun. So what if you don't like it? That's the thing. It's difficult for me to answer that question because I'm in my second year and most of it's been COVID. So I don't feel like I have enough information to say I don't like it just yet, because everything, I'm still kind of in that honeymoon stage. Like everything has been great. I'm enjoying meeting with the boys and their families, and it's just been a great change for me. But for those that have gone through this and then maybe you can go back to the college side. You don't have to stay in college counseling. I know several people that have done that, so it's not like you can't go back. You probably won't, but you can go back. And then also you're gaining skills that you can use in different jobs as well. I sort of think of some of the high schools as a sort of like a small college setting. There's other opportunities in these high schools. In the administrative side, some folks have gone to college counseling and then went on to be teachers or dean of students, things like that. So there are definitely opportunities in other places if you decide that you don't like it. And the last thing I'll leave you guys with before passing it on to Coach Dan is, as you're really thinking about this possible change and if you want to pursue those conversations, try to analyze it with a 30,000 foot view, so to speak. So if you talk about it maybe in the midst of reading season and you're stressed out and you got to read 50 files before a deadline, that's maybe not the best time to make a decision to change the college counseling. Because there's times of the year on the admissions side where you feel really comfortable, and there's times of the year where you're like, you know what, I'm ready to go. This is not the move for me. So try to think of it big picture and not necessarily in the moment of one of the cycles of the season. You may not be as necessarily ready to go when you're traveling and getting upgraded at these Hilton hotels because you may not have as many points on the college side. So just think about it in a broad view. Be thoughtful as you have those conversations. Trust your network. Talk to people you trust as you're thinking about making this change. And hopefully we'll be able to do some more Q&A, at the end of this session. And I'm gonna go ahead and pass it to Coach Dan, who's gonna talk a little bit more.
Leslie just brought up the single biggest thing I miss about college admissions, and that's my hotel points. I no longer get free vacations from my family at Marriott's around the country, but that's a small price to pay for the joys of this job. I'm a little different in that I'm in a boarding environment, and so Bartley said he's never worked 17 days in a row on the college counseling side. I have. But I will tell you that it's a choice and a lifestyle that my wife and I have truly enjoyed. And one of the things I think, particularly in the boarding environments, for any of you that are considering a boarding school, it is a lifestyle. But I will tell you without a shadow of a doubt, it has made me a better college counselor because I see the students all day long. And when I go home, I'm still at work. And that's an okay thing. I mean, that's something we've gotten used to, and we've also made the choice to raise our kids in boarding schools because it's a great environment for our own children to grow up in. So I'm going to talk about some of the surprises. We all of us, at least the four of us, have come in with college admissions experience. You don't have to be a college counselor, but obviously you're participating in this as a member of SACAC and most likely are an admission officer already. But the admissions experience is a great thing because you do, as Bartley said, and Leslie said it as well, you know more than you think you know. And we've all read hundreds of thousands of applications in our admissions careers, and we know what pieces are in those applications, but to actually get a high school student to pull those pieces together is a totally different thing than you seeing the completed packet that your operations office put together for you when you read paper files and now you're reading online and everything's all nice and neat and organized. Putting those applications together is a process. It's a tedious process, and it's working with high school students. And I thank the good Lord every day that I came into college counseling after Naviance had been fully implemented for years and years and years at my previous school. And we transitioned to SCORE here at St. Andrews. And so everything's online, everything's electronic. When I have to put together a paper packet, it's almost like, oh, where do I even get stamps? But putting those pieces together, I think, is some of the most important things of working with students. And I think for me, I start working with our students really early on, sophomore years, when I start college counseling. Because as Bartley said, and Ann has said, and we've all said it, there's no emergencies in college counseling. And when they start planning early on, they'll be prepared for that. But getting those high school students to follow through and do all those things is still going to be a challenge regardless of where you are, whether you're an all boys school like MBA, co-ed or single sex, all girls, you're going to have all sorts of issues. There are going to be things coming up. There's high school drama. We all remember that from our high school days. You can't avoid that. And so how do you get the students is you just meet with them. And I'm lucky, and I'll acknowledge that I'm lucky in that I'm a small school. My caseload, my senior caseload is between 30 and 50 at the most. And I'm the only college counselor. When you have some of the bigger offices where you have multiple college counselors, your caseload might be about the same as mine. It might be even smaller. And that's a great thing. Or it might be bigger, but you're able to work with the students and sit down with them. During 9 to 5, I am only a college counselor. So that is my job. Somebody asked a question about mental health counseling and if that's part of my job. Thankfully, no. Am I qualified for that? No, but we have a school counselor that works with them. And if they do need that emotional support, I can work with our school counselor to get them there. Obviously, you're going to deal with students in emotional situations. The college admission process is one of the most gut-wrenching things some students will go through. It doesn't have to be. It's our job to make it easy. It's our job to make it so that they can come through in pieces and that they're not they're able to handle the pieces of the applications along the way. One of those bullets there, bad information out there. For every time you talk with a student, you're gonna hear some students say, my friends told me, oh, I heard, or I saw it on TikTok. I don't even know how to get on TikTok. So, you're gonna see things and you're gonna hear things, and there's a lot of replacing information with the correct information. Leslie was 100% right when he said, I'm gonna flip my computer screen around sometimes and I'm gonna say to the students, let's learn together. I don't know everything about Ursinus, although their mascot is the bear. I didn't look that up. I knew that. They have bears all over their campus, statues, not live ones. And so, you're going to learn those things with the students and hopefully not have to correct so much bad information. But with the advent of more and more social media platforms, there's going to be more misinformation out there because the students are going to hear from them. Leslie also touched on this a little bit, but the great thing is we're all coming into college counseling with admissions experience. And I've been asked at both institutions that I've worked for if I wanted to get involved in the admissions and enrollment office. And my answer has been a black and white no, because on the college side, students, unless they're going to the service academies, they're going to pay something for college. And on the high school side, there's always a free option. And so to work in admissions and secondary information, when you're working against a potential free option as a competitor to your school, I think that's a hard sell sometimes. Obviously, I think our institution is fantastic and is worth the price that it is. But I've never really considered working in enrollment on the secondary side as opposed to working on the college side. It is an option. It's a great option if you're interested in it. It's been a hard no for me, but there's definitely that opportunity, and I'm sure those opportunities will come up. And thankfully, and I think that's most importantly, many more independent schools, even public schools and private schools across the country are adding diversity and equity inclusion positions. And that it can be a fantastic opportunity for many of you to come in and put your name on it. If the school is doing it right, it's a leadership position. It's reporting directly to the head of school, the president of the school. And it's something that I would definitely encourage you to look into it. It is something that may be ultimately combined within the college counseling office and working together with the college counseling office. But that's also something to consider as you're making the transition. Are you interested in just college counseling, or do you want other things? I'm a member of our administration. I think a lot of directors end up being a member of the administration, and there's many other duties as assigned. If you've gotten an email from me this year at any point, you've seen that my second title is COVID-19 coordinator. And that's something that hopefully I'm going to be able to get rid of soon enough as it all disappears as the weather gets warmer. That's what we've been told, right? Hopefully that's something but there's a lot of other duties as assigned when you work in a secondary school, and that's one of the ones for me. Working with applications and volume, I've really held the line with my students, both in Connecticut and here in Tennessee. And I tell my students to apply to 5 to 7 schools and no more than 10. I won't send materials if students are applying to 20 and 30 schools because they just feel like it. There are times certainly when students need to apply to more schools for financial reasons, et cetera, et cetera. But I really try to hold the line to no more than 10 applications. One of the bullets is there's a huge growth in students applying to state schools because they perceive we're running out of time. I'm going too long. I got to turn it over to Ann soon. Letters of recommendation. You've read thousands of them. Write the way you want to write. Write the way you want to read. I write a bulleted narrative letter. It takes me about an hour to write my letters for my students when I have all the information in front of me. I'll present more on letters of recommendation at summer seminar this year for SACAC. So I'm going to turn it over to Ann.
Thank you, Dan. And these slides are going to be available to you. I think as you registered, you had to actually share your email address. Want to give a shout out to SACAC Summer Seminar, which is going to be virtual this year. If you're not familiar with Summer Seminar, it's a program run by SACAC. It's training for new college, high school counselors. And so very critical to make those contacts and learn. Somebody asked in the questions about letters of recommendation. Identifying job opportunities. That's a big piece of this, right? And certainly I want to point out that networking is the #1 way that people get jobs in just about any industry. And this is a big field to network in. That's how you find out what jobs are coming up before they even get posted. But the organizations that I've listed, and these are hyperlinks to websites where you can either look at job listings or even be registered as a candidate. And I just can't reiterate enough how critical it is to rely on your colleagues in this profession. I had several conversations with dear colleagues that I worked with when I was on the college side, and they were my high school counselor, and just to understand what it was like. Those colleagues were critical in preparing me for the expectations of what it was going to be like on this side of the desk, so that there weren't as many surprises. I think one of my big surprise when we had an intruder drill, that was a surprise. We don't do those at the college level. That was a little disturbing. But just like you know that you were trying to help find the right fit for those colleges that you were, the students that you were recruiting to your college, take the time to think about what is going to be the right fit opportunity for you at the high school level. And I know that it is at the end of time. And so we have just given you so much, and we've tried to address the questions there. And I'm going to see if there's any other questions that haven't been addressed. Our email addresses are here. We definitely are happy to answer any questions, whether general or even just personal, right? I just a year ago was going through this process. And so I haven't finished my first full year on this side of the desk. But I'm enjoying the work. I'm glad to be where I know I'm making a difference. My favorite question to ask students is why. So when they say, they want to apply to this school, or I ask them why. And I watch them try to think about why it is that they really want it. And some of them are really great at articulating, others aren't. But by pushing them to really be able to think through why they're making the decisions, you're helping them make an informed decision. And that is really, really rewarding. So any last minute comments before we get shut down here, gentlemen?
The last thing I wanted to say was I saw a question in the chat about, what if you've been interviewing for some positions and been getting beaten out by folks that have experience. I'm happy to talk with folks about the interview process and my experience and just tips I like to offer to folks. But think about it, as you go into these interviews, you have that admissions experience, and it's valuable. You know what the schools want, so just continue to amplify the skills that you do have, and I feel like it's gonna come through, and the right fit's gonna come through for you. Just I think Ann said, keep at it as well in the answer. Keep at it, stay persistent. The things that you may have fear and anxiety about, recommendation letters and learning about these schools. I'm happy to talk about those things. I know Dan talked about rec letters a little bit, but you learn, what a great rec letter looks like, and you'll write them, you'll get it done. You just don't know how. You haven't seen it done, so it can be kind of scary, but you'll get it done, and you know what a good rec letter looks like. You've read plenty of them.
The way that I can describe work-life balance is that when I was in enrollment management, I often needed a glass of wine or two multiple days of the week. Now, sometimes I just want a glass of wine after work.
And the one thing I'll add about salaries, there was a lot of questions about salaries. Leslie said it perfectly. It depends. But I think one of the things that to consider about salaries is that you are making that work-life balance choice, and that you are making a decision that will, you're going to have a lot of other benefits to working on the high school side versus the college side. Full disclosure, my salaries haven't changed much although they did change significantly from Connecticut to Tennessee, but that's a different story. It's all about choices and what works for you and your family, or you just individually. But I wouldn't worry too much about the salaries. It'll work out.
I see a question about opportunities for college counselors outside the United States. And I don't know that any of us have had those experiences, but we know people that are working as college counselors outside of the United States. And so there's a great, there's a great need for that experience. You can imagine being in a foreign country and not having as direct access to go visit colleges where you just really need somebody who's going to help be a liaison. So, and that's a great experience for family. Just like Dan's getting to live on campus with his family, you may want to have the experience living in a different country with your family. Yep. Thanks, Ivy, for the information about contacting International ACAC on overseas counseling. And Juan Alvarez for also giving a shout out to that. All right. We're kind of at a stopping point, and I'm sorry we didn't have time to even answer more questions, but thank you for all of you that joined us this morning. I'm sending big air hugs to all of you because I really wish we could be in person. That's one of the hugs are one of the things that I miss most. A big shout out to my dear colleagues, Leslie, Bartley, and Dan for their time and expertise. And do not hesitate to reach out to any of us or to your SACIAC colleagues. One of my favorite things about this profession is how collegial we are and how willing to help. So thanks again, and consider joining this side of the desk.